Good Wednesday morning, everyone, and welcome into today's daily Bible reading for September the 27th. Today we are reading together in 2 Kings chapter 13, which the focus is going to shift back from the southern tribes of Judah to the northern tribes of Israel. We're going to see a few kings today for Israel. We're going to see Jehoahaz. We're going to see Jehoash. And then we're going to see Jeroboam, as well as mentioned here. And then we'll also see the switching of the kings for Aram or Syria from Hazael to his son Ben-Hadad. And we're going to see the passing of Elisha in a very weird, kind of strange, random story pertaining to Elisha's death here within this text as well. But let me get the text of 2 Kings chapter 13 up on the screen. There we go. And let's read along together here. 2 Kings chapter 13. 2 Kings 13, verse number 1. In the 23rd year of Judah's king Joash, son of Ahaziah, Jehoahaz, son of Jehu, became king over Israel in Samaria, and he reigned 17 years. He did what was evil in Yahweh's sight and followed the sins that Jeroboam, son of Nebat, had caused Israel to commit. He did not turn away from them. So Yahweh's anger burned against Israel, and he handed them over to King Hazael of Aram and to his son Ben-Hadad during their reigns. Then Jehoahaz sought Yahweh's favor, and Yahweh heard him. For he saw the oppression of the king of Aram inflicted on Israel. Therefore, Yahweh gave them a deliverer, and they escaped from the power of the Arameans. Then the people of Israel returned to their former way of life, but they didn't turn away from the sins that the house of Jeroboam had caused Israel to commit. Jehoahaz continued them, and the Asherah pole also remained standing in Samaria. Jehoahaz did not have an army left except for 50 horsemen, 10 chariots, and 10,000 foot soldiers, because the king of Aram had destroyed them, making them like dust at the threshing. The rest of the events of Jehoahaz's reign, along with all his accomplishments and his might, are written in the historical record of Israel's kings. Jehoahaz rested with his ancestors, and he was buried in Samaria. His son Jehoash became king in his place. In the 37th year of Judah's king Joash, Jehoash, son of Jehoahaz, became king over Israel in Samaria. He reigned 16 years. He did what was evil in Yahweh's sight. He did not turn away from all the sins that Jeroboam, son of Nebat, had caused Israel to commit, but he continued them. That's it. The rest of the events of Jehoahash's reign, along with all his accomplishments and the power he had to wage war against Judah's king Amaziah, are written in the historical record of Israel's kings. Jehoash rested with his ancestors, and Jeroboam sat on his throne. Jehoash, was buried in Samaria with the kings of Israel. When Elisha became sick with the illness from which he died, King Jehoash of Israel went down and wept over him and said, my father, the chariots and horsemen of Israel. Elisha responded, get a bow and arrows. So he got a bow and arrows. Then Elisha said to the king of Israel, grasp the bow. So the king grasped it. And Elisha put his hands on the king's hands. Elisha said, open the east window. So he opened it. And Elisha said, shoot. So he shot. Then Elisha said, Yahweh's arrow of victory. Yes, the arrow of victory over Aram. You are to strike down the Arameans in Aphek until you have put them to an end. Then Elisha said, take the arrows. So he took them. Then Elisha said to the king of Israel, strike the ground. So he struck the ground 3 times and stopped. The man of God was angry with him and said, you should have struck the ground 5 or 6 times. Then you would have struck down Aram until you had put an end to them. But now you will strike down Aram only 3 times. Then Elisha died and was buried. Now Moabite raiders used to come into the land in the spring of the year. Once, as the Israelites were burying a man, suddenly they saw a raiding party, so they threw the man into Elisha's tomb. And when he touched Elisha's bones, the man revived and stood up. King Hazael of Aram oppressed Israel throughout the reign of Jehoahaz, but Yahweh was gracious to them, had compassion on them, and turned toward them because of his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He was not willing to destroy them. Even now, he has not banished them from his presence. King Hazael of Aram died, and his son Ben-Hadad became king in his place. Then Jehoash, son of Jehoahaz, took back from Ben-Hadad, son of Hazael, the cities that Hazael had taken in war from Jehoash's father, Jehoahaz. Jehoash defeated Ben-Hadad 3 times and recovered the cities of Israel. That is the reading of 2 Kings chapter 13. Again, we're just progressing the story here, moving again from focusing on the southern tribes of Judah back to the northern tribes of Israel. And unsurprisingly, we keep reading the same thing about these kings, that they are wicked. The king of the day is, or one of the kings of the day is Jehoahaz. This is Jehu's son, Jehu, who, had some good things going for him, but unfortunately got caught up in the paganism as well. His son's no different. He did what was evil in Yahweh's sight, followed the sins of Jeroboam, the son of Nebat, the sins that he had caused Israel to commit. So he's, again, a paganistic version of worship to Yahweh. Yahweh doesn't accept just any sort of worship. He doesn't accept just any type of worship. He expects for worship to be given to him on his terms, and his terms did not include worship places at Dan and Bethel involving golden calves. Those things God did not want. And because that, his anger burned against them, and he handed them over to King Hazael of Aram and his son Ben-Hadad. Remember, Hadad was kind of like the Baal of Aram or Syria, the same place that we're talking about here. Aram and Syria are the same people, the Syrians and the Arameans. Hadad was basically their version of Baal. So this is the son of Baal. He's named after their pagan, their patron deity, the pagan god. And he is Ben-Hadad and his father Hazael had their way with Israel for quite some time. But during this, the text tells us that Jehoahaz sought Yahweh's favor. So it seems that for a time he repented and he came to God and threw himself at his mercy. And we see Yahweh's graciousness towards him in that he gave them an unnamed deliverer. He saw the affliction that Aram was causing on his people, and he sent a deliverer who helped them to escape from the power of the Arameans. Who is this, though? Who is this deliverer? Well, we don't know. We don't know who this is. There's an unnamed person that Yahweh sent to deliver his people. It shows that those who do great work, we don't necessarily always know their names. Probably many people around us who are doing great work for the Lord that we never know about. And we should be thankful to God for that work they're doing, and not seeking any sort of recognition for it, but just recognizing the good that they can do and graciously doing that work. Unfortunately, Israel did not respond in kind to Yahweh. They did not turn away from the sins that the house of Jeroboam had committed. The Asherah poles continued to remain in Samaria. So it was very much unsustained repentance. This wasn't them staying where they needed to be. This wasn't them responding with long-term changes. They just went back to kind of their old ways. And it shows process as well that the army that they had was basically next to nothing. And this was because of their sin. God did not protect them. God did not bless them as they continue to sin against him. So that is it for the reign of Jehoahaz. He rests with his father, and his son Jehoash becomes king. Once again, he did what was evil in Yahweh's sight. He continued this paganistic worship of Yahweh. But we're also told, and really there's not much that's said to us about Jehoash except for that. So we're going to see that he was involved in the last days of Elisha. But again, he led the nation in pagan worship. We'll also read that he waged war against Judah during his time. Again, there's probably some things in Chronicles that are not mentioned here that we will highlight once we read through that text. But again, just not a ton of details. So Jehoash, he goes on, once we move past him and his son Jeroboam. comes into power, but we're not going to see him until chapter 15. I don't think. Let me see here. Chapter 14, we'll look more at Jeroboam. But then we're told about Elisha's death. Elisha, not be surprising to us, he just gets sick and dies from an illness. And that might seem a bit strange to us. That's someone who was such a powerful force for Yahweh, someone who encouraged others to do what was right, that called the nation to repentance, who did mighty deeds in the name of Yahweh, that he would just get sick and die. That might seem very strange to us, but that's just life. Sometimes the best among us, very just unfortunate things happen. And that was Elisha's end. He had a sickness and he died. But before that, the text tells us that Jehoash went to him and wept over him and said, my father, the chariots and horsemen of Israel. What does that mean? You might remember that we've already seen this. In fact, this is what Elisha said as he saw Elijah going up into the heavens on the fiery chariot and horse, with the fiery chariot and horsemen, and horses, I should say. Elisha said that to Elijah. And I think the meaning of this is, you are Israel's strength. You are someone that Israel relies upon. What are we going to do now that you're gone? Well, this is what Elisha says. You need to get some bows and some arrows. Jehoash does this. You need to shoot one out the window. He does that. And Elisha says, well, this is what Yahweh is going to do. He's going to deliver you from Aram. You're going to strike down the Arameans at Aphek, and you're going to do so until you put into them. Then he says, take the arrows and strike the ground. I think the understanding here is you need to shoot the arrows at the ground. And Jehoash does this, but only 3 times, then stops. Perhaps this was a lack of zeal on his part. He's like, okay, whatever, just does it. And Elisha gets mad at him for it. He says, man, you should have kept doing it until you couldn't do that anymore. And you know what? Because of that, you're only going to have 3 victories over Aram instead of actually wiping them out as you could have done. And after that, Elisha dies and he is buried. Then we have, again, just this very strange little story in verses 20 and 21 about some Moabite raiders being in the land. Some Israelites are going to go bury a person. They see the Moabite raiders, they freak out, and they just toss the guy into this tomb, and his dead body hits Elisha's bones, and the man revives. What's up with that? I don't know. I don't know what that is, apart from there just being a number of parallels between Elisha and Jesus, and how Jesus can come in contact with dead people and raise them from the dead as well. I don't know. This is just a crazy little bit, a good trivia bit, I would say, for us just to keep in mind as we're thinking about the Old Testament, some of the kookier, crazier things that are found within it. Just a very, very strange occasion and seemingly comes out of nowhere, but nonetheless, it is here. And I wish I had more for you than that. If you have any thoughts or questions about that, please feel free to leave that in the comment section below. The text ends by considering God's mercy on Israel. King Hazael of Aram, remember, is oppressing Israel. Elisha said that he was going to do this, and yet Yahweh has compassion on Israel, even during the reign of an evil king like Jehoahaz. He still has compassion on them. He is moved based upon his covenant with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. He wasn't willing to just let Israel be completely destroyed. Even now, it's interesting, the end of 23, even now, he has not banished them from his presence. It seems to be, again, if this is written during the time of captivity, that, yeah, they might be in captivity, but they're not gone. They're not completely wiped out. God still is caring for them and preserving a remnant. Again, all this is done based upon God's faithfulness to his covenant. If only the children of Israel showed their own faithfulness to the covenant, how much better their history would have turned out. Nevertheless, his graciousness is shown towards the people by allowing them to have some success against Ben-Hadad, and he was able to take take back some of the cities back from Aram, and they were blessed by that. And it's just crazy to me that God here, twice within this chapter, is blessing a people who aren't exactly serving him well. In fact, doing what is evil in his sight. Yet that just shows us the graciousness of God. And really, again, we remember that this is all based upon the covenant. I wonder, what would God have done with this people had the covenant not been in reality? I don't know. But the reality is that the covenant was there, that he had made that covenant, and God was so faithful to his covenant. He was so loyal to his covenant, so loyal, so faithful to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, that even whenever their descendants did wrong continually, God was still working on his plan to make sure his promises to these patriarchs would come to pass. And it's incredible to see the gracious, patient nature of God on display, even within a text such as this. And makes us certainly, I hope it certainly causes us to be thankful for the grace and patience that God shows in our own lives. If you have any questions about this text, again, please feel free to leave that in the comment section below. Looking forward to being with everybody tonight for our Bible studies at 7 p.m. I think yesterday I failed to mention, I believe yesterday was Craig and Sarah's anniversary. So very happy anniversary to them. We appreciate them very much. Thanks for tuning in today, everybody. Hope you have a great rest of your Wednesday. Look forward to seeing everyone here in just a little bit. Take care and God bless.